Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 5:30 News on KAJ, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, I'm Don Fisher. Classes resumed today in the Flathead Valley after a cyber attack forced a 3-day closure for safety reasons. MTN's Jack Ginsburg was at the Columbia Falls High School today and has the story.
Tuesday morning, students and faculty were welcomed back to Columbia Falls High School, among many other schools across the Flathead Valley. Steve Bradshaw, the superintendent of the Columbia Falls schools, says having the students back was great because it reminded him of what his job is all about.
The last 5 or 6 days is not what the job should be. The days that you have kids and you go into classrooms and you see kids learning and you see kids excited about learning, that's what the job should be.
Parker Green, a student here at Columbia Falls High, says there's been lots of talk in the hallways already since coming back. Some students are still on edge, while others feel completely safe.
Being back, it's just kind of normal for me. Some other kids, they're kind of nervous, but I don't think we have anything to be worried about.
Other students questioned why the threats came from overseas to Columbia Falls.
Why did they pick Columbia Falls? Why did they pick small town Montana?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not too worried about it. I don't think they're going to do anything.
Students here at the school say that they recognize that the cyber threats were out of the ordinary, but the way the community banded together and stayed calm was nothing new for Columbia Falls.
The community, we've all been together, everyone's supporting each other. We always come together, and any times, like with kids having cancer, we all come together. So this is just another thing where the community, we show how strong we are, we come together.
In Columbia Falls, Jack Ginsburg, MTN News.
Sports and other activities will also resume this week, and the much-anticipated Legends Field in Kalispell will make its debut on Friday night. Things are also back to normal for a Dillon High School after a scare yesterday. 2 Beaverhead High students have been arrested and are accused of bringing handguns to the school. MTN's John Amy has that story.
2 students were found on campus with handguns in their backpacks. A student at the school found out about these handguns and told staff, who promptly called police.
And we went in and took them out without incident, searched each one of their persons or their personal belongings, and were able to locate 2 firearms, 2 loaded firearms.
The 2 juveniles were arrested, and the rest of the students were sent home early Monday. Investigators with search dogs searched the school that afternoon for any other weapons, but nothing threatening was found.
We were able to establish that this was an isolated incident. We don't feel that there's any threat outside of what occurred today.
Dillon Police Chief Don Giberson praised the student for alerting staff about the alleged handguns at the school, and he commended the staff for following the proper protocol.
The school did exactly what they were supposed to do. Law enforcement did what they were supposed to. Students did what they were supposed to, and nobody's hurt. And I think that we can come away from it as, maybe a positive thing. The
chief would not say if the 2 students arrested had planned to harm anybody at the school. However, he says it's now safe for students to return to school. In Dillon, John Amy, MTN News.
And those 2 students are expected to be charged with felony counts of criminal endangerment in juvenile court and therefore will not be identified. The city of Whitefish will lift Stage 2 fire restrictions tomorrow. With the recent rain and wet forecast, Whitefish joins the DNRC and will lift those restrictions on Wednesday, September 20th. Whitefish Fire Chief Joseph Page says he thanks everybody for their cooperation during this past wildland season and says cooperation amongst all Flathead County fire departments was exceptional, especially with the resources stretched so thin. And our Montana Wildlife Relief Fund now sits at nearly $92,000 and counting. Thank you to everyone who's contributed so far, and please remember that our MTN stations will match the first $50,000 of that total. Arthur Blank, owner of the Mountain Sky Guest Ranch near Livingston, and the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation will also match $50,000 in donations. If you haven't donated, it's not too late. Just go to kaj18.com for more information. And another cloudy day today in northwest Montana, and for a look at how things are going to shape up for the rest of the work week, we'll take it over to Chief Meteorologist Aaron Yost for a look at our first forecast. Aaron?
Things looking pretty similar, Don, for the rest of the work week. What we're seeing happen right now is a large upper level trough of low pressure starting to move over the region. And that's going to settle on in and provide us with these cool and unsettled conditions. Now, this is a radar loop over the past 3 hours. Unfortunately, it drops out at the end, but you can see overall where that moisture is coming from, kind of who is seeing what, mountain snow, valley rain, even a couple of lightning strikes in the mix as a rumble or 2 of thunder. Definitely not out of the question. Of course, we're still technically in the summer season, but we are going to say goodbye to it this coming Friday as the first day of fall moves in, and it's going to feel like it. More details coming up.
Thank you, Aaron. 2 people are dead and multiple children injured after a head-on crash between a school bus and a pickup truck near Glasgow this morning. The crash happened around 6:40 a.m. on Highway 2. Montana Highway Patrol says the female driver of the eastbound pickup truck crossed the center line and struck the westbound bus head-on. The speed limit on the 2-lane highway is 70 miles per hour, but the speeds of either vehicle are unknown. Both drivers were killed and up to 4 children on the bus were hospitalized. MHP does believe that the female driver may have been fatigued when the crash occurred, but this incident is still under investigation. And 1 man is dead and another injured after a crash in Missoula late last night. The one vehicle accident happened around 11 p.m. at the intersection of Johnson and 13th Streets. Sergeant Travis Welsh of the Missoula Police Department says the Missoula man was driving while with a male passenger traveling north on Johnson when the vehicle went off the road, clipping a corner of a house before going through a small shed, then coming to rest in the alley. The driver was killed while the passenger was transported to a local hospital. There were 2 adults and a child in the house at the time of the accident, but they were not injured. Traffic was closed on Johnson Street from 12th to 13th Streets Tuesday morning, while the accident remains under investigation. The name of the victim is not being released at this time. Hurricane Maria is slamming the Caribbean as a powerful Category 5 storm. It made landfall last night on the island of Dominica and is blamed for at least 1 death in Guadalupe. Now the storm forecasters are calling potentially catastrophic storm as it sets course for the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. Jose Torres reports from San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Hurricane Maria is flowing its way through the Caribbean. This is the drenching rain on the island of Guadalupe as a powerful Category 5 storm made landfall on nearby Dominica. Now Maria is on course for the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico.
Por su seguridad.
Today, the governor of Puerto Rico went house to house trying to convey the seriousness of the storm.
We need to get the people out of the flooding prone areas. We need to get the people out of the vulnerable housing that will essentially just fly off.
If Maria holds its current strength, it will be the most powerful hurricane to hit Puerto Rico in 85 years. Time is running out for residents to get to the shelters.
How many shelters do you have open and how many people can you shelter?
500 shelters right now, probably upwards 150,000. Maybe we can push it more.
Puerto Rico's governor says he expects the entire island to lose power and be in a blackout for days. Last week, parts of the U.S. Virgin Islands took a pounding from Hurricane Irma and are now bracing for Maria. St. Thomas and St. John are still dealing with the widespread devastation from that storm, and it looks like St. Croix may see the worst of Maria. President Trump has already signed emergency declarations for the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico as Maria approaches. Guillermo Jose Torres for CBS News, San Juan, Puerto Rico.
And the Prime Minister of Dominica, an island nation of about 72,000, called Maria's destruction in his country mind-boggling. His own house was hit, and he says everyone that he's spoken with so far has had damage to their homes as well. President Trump addressed the United Nations General Assembly for the first time today, discussing a wide range of issues including sovereignty, security, and prosperity, but North Korea and Iran received the harshest criticism. Meg Oliver has the story from New York.
President Donald Trump showcased his America First policy during a spirited 41-minute address to the United Nations General Assembly.
In America, we do not seek to impose our way of life on anyone, but rather to let it shine as an example for everyone to watch. As President of the United States, I will always put America first.
Mr. Trump called on world leaders to isolate North Korea's Kim Jong-un and discourage his nuclear weapons ambitions. But the president also warned.
The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself.
The president rebuked Iran for supporting terrorism and called the international agreement to freeze its nuclear program a one-sided deal.
Frankly, that deal is an embarrassment to the United States, and I don't think you've heard the last of it, believe me.
The president had tough talk for the leadership of the UN, demanding major reforms to the organization to make them more effective at stopping threats around the globe.
It is a massive source of embarrassment to the United Nations that some governments with egregious human rights records sit on the UN Human Rights Council.
The president did not mention Russia or its president, Vladimir Putin, who was not at the UN. Meg Oliver, CBS News, the United Nations.
And President Trump will meet with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and host a reception for UN leaders later today. And coming up after the break, we'll take you to the University of Montana for a traditional Native American regalia ceremony held as part of the American Indian Heritage Week. And later in sports, football returns to Kalispell's Legends Stadium after cancellations last week, and that's all coming up on KAJ.